I was scared of being told off or that I was not enough. And the drugs, they took away that fear. All that insecurity was brushed away. And I was floating with people, so I could communicate and I didn't care what I was saying. When I was overdosed at the club, cocaine was already a problem for me. That was the time that my husband said, okay, it's me or the drugs. You have to choose. I cannot do that anymore. My sons back in my life, and my husband and my two boys, the three of them are back in my life. I have a family again.
Hello and welcome to 12 Steps and 12 Questions. My name is Silvio and I'm an addict. This pod is full of personal and inspirational stories of recovery from addiction. And in every episode I'll ask each guest the same 12 questions about their life, addiction and recovery. Quick warning, there will be some graphic descriptions and a healthy amount of swearing. For this episode, please welcome Mariana.
Mariana, thank you so much for coming around and being my guest today on 12 Steps and 12 Questions. Welcome.
Thank you, Silvio. Thank you for asking me. It was such a pleasure to be here and such an honor.
Wonderful. Could you introduce yourself quickly, please?
Yeah. So my name is Mariana. I'm an addict. I'm from Brazil and I moved here about 12 years ago. I am a visual artist, a florist. And and back to study again.
Great. That's great.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. Let's move straight to question one, please, which is, did you have any adverse childhood experiences?
So I wouldn't call it adverse. I had peculiar things that happened, but they were not like horrible things. They were things that left a mark on me. And left a mark on the way I interact with the world. But they were not, they were not bad things. They were life things. My mom was really young when she had me. She was 21.
Yeah.
And she was still studying in uni. So I stayed till 7 years old, practically living with my grandma.
Okay.
So for me, the mother figure was a little bit blurred. I thought my grandma was my mom. Although my mom loves me and my mom was with me most of the time, it was blurred, these distinctions between the two. And
confusing maybe as well.
Yeah, it was very confusing. And when I was 7 years old, my mom and my dad, they moved places from far away from my grandma. And that separation brought me with a lot of anxiety. It was a really suffering moment in my life. It was quite difficult. And I think that reflects a lot in my later on in life.
So you moved away from the person that you had the closest relationship with?
Yeah. I create a kind of
separation anxiety?
Yes, separation anxiety in a way that for me to say goodbye, even in daily life, if someone's going to, my husband's going to work to say goodbye, I have to look in the eye.
Wow.
And I have it's like a certainty. Okay, things are all right. He's coming back. So it's something that really left a mark on me.
Yeah.
That is not to say a horrible event, but it was what the scars that life brings to us. It's from small things, and for me it was that.
Apart from this separation anxiety, as you call it, did you have any brothers and sisters that you were able to share this with?
No, I'm the eldest. My brother is younger than my sister. Is almost 10 years younger than me. So I was pretty much myself.
Right.
That was, yeah.
And this was the biggest event, adverse event, if you will, in your childhood?
Yeah, that is the first big thing that I can relate it to, that left marks that I carry to today. That undoubtedly, this is a big thing for me.
Yeah. So coming to question two. Question two is, what the moment you first got hooked on drugs or alcohol, the fun times, what did that look like? So here you are, you have this event that, as you say, marked you in some way or another. You see a big grin on your face. So what did the good times look like? So at some point, drugs and alcohol were introduced in your life, weren't they?
Yeah. So the first thing that I had was drink, obviously. Not obviously, but it's normally what is on hand, isn't it? And I didn't like it. I drank to black out the first time. I did. Although in my life, there was always drinks available when I was a kid, because I come from an Italian family. So on Sundays, they had a kind of drink with alcohol, with very small portion of alcohol for the kids, but they did have. And we had each kid could have like a glass of it to toast with the family.
Okay. Do you remember the name of the drink? Just out of interest.
It was red wine, water, and sugar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's very yeah. So the first time that I really drink by myself as an adult, like with proper drink, I drank too much. It was a blackout, and I hate it. I didn't like it. So I stay away from drinks for a long period of my life. I started drinking, I think I was around 20 when I started drinking. But before that, when I was a teenager, I was very shy and very wary of the world. People, I was scared of people.
So a lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety. And we were with a group of friends traveling on the beach, and I tried some weed, and I love it.
Right.
And I love the effects of this, really relaxing the muscles, the mind. I stopped thinking. Everything was fun, and I laughed a lot. So it was really, I was hooked there.
Right, okay. With weed, the first time you took it right away.
In months, I was already having it practically every day.
Right, okay. So you moved right away into, this is a great solution for my anxiety problem.
Definitely, without knowing it. That's a thing. And now, looking back, I can see that there was a lot of things happening in my life at the time. My parents were getting divorced.
Right.
My boyfriend was moving to Europe, and there was a lot of things and I was, every time I'd say no, I'm fine. I'm okay. Everything is all right. Life is this way. And with my separation anxiety, everything crumbling around me. So I can see the comfort that weed gave me, this peaceful in my heart, and not to deal with the pain.
I suppose, I can see if you've had from the very beginning an issue with separation, with people leaving, the fact that your parents were getting divorced, so, that brings a lot of uncertainty, and then your boyfriend literally leaving. So that must have struck right at the heart of your anxiety.
Yeah, it did. It did. But unfortunately, at the time, I wasn't aware of what was going on with me. It took me a really long time to acknowledge this pain that I had from my childhood.
Yeah.
So I was feeling sad, extremely anxious, but I couldn't acknowledge that. I was trying to be okay. I was trying to keep my life going. I was 15.
Right, okay. Very young.
Yeah, and it was a time that my mom was not well mentally. She was really depressed with the divorce. The divorce was really hard. It was like a tough period in the family. So I assumed the role of carer. So I took care of my mom, of my brother, of my sister, but they didn't take care of me. Definitely. Yes.
It's something I can relate to in some ways. I've often said that being the parent of your parent at an early age, and this is something that happened to me as well for many reasons, is one of the toughest jobs you can have. And there is a certain amount of self-neglect that can come along with that. You know, if you're looking after everybody, especially if you're so young, if you're looking after everybody, and particularly if you're looking after a parent, that reversal of the role, somehow there's something in it, I'm not quite sure what it is, but there's something really profound in that, and that certainly accelerated for me at the time when I was maybe around the same age, actually, accelerated my drug use. I was, actually, funnily enough, at 15, I was also a full-on stoner, absolutely full-on, everyday, user. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, this changing the roles, it has a profound impact.
Yeah.
And I can only see it now. At that time, like, it was almost like survival mode.
Yeah.
I press the play and let's go for that.
Sure.
And
so here you are, you're 15. It's a difficult time. Your parents are getting divorced. Your boyfriend's leaving. You were very young. You're very, very young. You're such a young person. And you found this solution of weed that you're using more or less every day in order to cope, really, right? Even though you're not aware of it. How did it progress from there?
Yeah, so it was fun at that time because I was able to function and living and was okay. In Brazil, it was very easy for you to get weed, so I wasn't in any danger, I was in a safe place. My mom found out that I was smoking, and we had a deal that I would smoke inside the house, not outside. I wouldn't give it to my brother and sister. I wouldn't allow them to see me smoking. But I would be able to smoke inside the house because she was scared of the police. So because in Brazil it's a crime. So she was like, I'd rather you smoke here, safe, and not be arrested. Which it's fantastic in a way, but in another way it was like encouragement for me. Like I said, so it's okay for me to smoke.
I suppose for someone who's not an addict, that might be good advice, but, how would you know that at the time?
Yeah, I didn't know. Like, she was doing her best. I was doing my best. And for me, in a way, I was safe. But it was all right for me to smoke. And I kept smoking for years. So when I was around in my 20s, and I start uni a little bit late, because of all the family. I took like 2 years more to start my uni. And when I started studying, like for me, it was the place that I liked the most. I arrived at uni. Like, it was my moment. So my mom was better. My brother and sister, they were better. Everything was better. So, and I let it go at uni. So, I love it so much that I did 2 courses in a row so I could stay more at uni.
Were you using then at that time?
So I was smoking, I start drinking, and I start sniffing.
Right.
Using cocaine.
Okay.
It was when my first contact was but there was a party and... like for art, you have these walls, like for you to hang pictures, and normally like they are panels and moving around panels. So the party was all these panels around the walls. So you have like entrance. You could walk between the panels and the wall and the rear wall. And at the back, there was like a huge shelf. And everyone was sniffing. And for me, I said, okay, let's try it. I'm here to have fun.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, it was fun.
What did you enjoy it right away, or was it?
I enjoyed it right away. Right away. And also what was really, at the time, there was a lot of acid. And my university, they had a big department of chemistry. And they were really good in doing this.
God. Okay, so you had homemade acid.
Yeah, they was like really good. They were amazing in doing that.
Okay. Yeah. So this sounds
we
fun.
have batches.
Yeah. So this sounds like fun, right? So these are
It was a lot of fun at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was
consequences there.
No consequences. Like, it was really fun. Parties all the time. It was friendly. It was nothing. There was not overdoing of it. It was constantly, but there was not an excess of alcohol, of any substance.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what did it do for you, though? So, for instance, when I know, for instance, that when I was a teenager, between 15 and 20, something like that, I smoked every day. That was literally numbing. It was numbing for me. I didn't really enjoy it that much. It was quite numbing. It was only when I started taking stimulants, so ecstasy in particular, and speed and amphetamines of any kind, that I really felt this is I felt it was like enhancing me. It turned me from being, while outwardly appearing confident, inwardly I was actually quite easily embarrassed and feeling not right within myself, to being this really outwardly relaxed and confident guy. I rewatched The Nutty Professor the other day, actually, and in there, of course, he takes this potion and he becomes this guy, Buddy Love, and and that is exactly what happened to me. From being sort of, I wore glasses and I was a bit and uncomfortable, all of a sudden I was this Buddy Love kind of character who was quite cool and always the right thing to say. So returning back to those days in uni, you're not doing it to excess, but it must have done something for you.
Oh, it did. Absolutely. It took away the fear.
Right.
So that was, for me, was the big thing.
What kind of fear?
I was fearful of people. I think I had a lot of anxiety with people. Yeah, schools, my schools, they weren't the greatest for me. And so I carried this anxiety of it.
So is it like a social anxiety?
Social anxiety. I had friends, but not during school. During school periods, I didn't have friends. I found friends. Yeah, I found friends later on in life, when between high school and university. I really find my friends that we are friends till today.
Wow.
So they were the group that I really stayed together.
This fear that you're talking about, this social anxiety, how did that manifest? Was it fear of judgment, of what other people might say? Fear that you might not say the right thing, that people think you're uncool? What kind of fear?
It was fear of judgment, fear of not fitting in.
Right.
Fear of not doing the right thing, like making mistakes. I was so afraid of making mistakes. I think like this perfection was always around me. Like, so you have to execute everything to perfection. And that was quite painful because, like, I'm a human, like I cannot be perfect. Yeah. I'm allowed to make mistakes. But at that time, I was absolutely scared of making mistakes because I was scared of being told off, or that I was not enough, or that I was not wanted. So that, and the drugs, they took away that fear. They allowed, that feeling of, that all that insecurity was brushed away. And I was floating with people, so I could communicate, and I didn't care what I was saying. So I could, whatever I say, I felt okay with that.
So you lose that self-consciousness, don't you? That entire, always thinking about oneself. It's almost like you're in a room with other people, but really you're just in a room with yourself.
Yeah, I lost the anxiety, right? Yeah. Of what I'm saying, what I'm doing, how am I moving, how am I looking, and all this.
It's a painful place to be, that.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And the other thing that the drugs did to me, they sharpened my mind, because I was always like, my brain is very fired up. So I could think of a lot of things at the same time, and everything, like one thing leads to another. I lose attention here, I lose attention there. So all the amphetamines, they did bring me to a place where I could concentrate in one thing for a longer period. And I love it. So for the first time, I could sit for like 2 hours with one subject. Otherwise,
Do you have ADHD?
Yes, I do.
Right, okay. But you didn't know that at the time.
I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah,
I didn't know. And I found it like I felt different, and I felt not belonging to anywhere most of my life. And I find curious that most addicts, they do have this feeling.
Yeah, I think that's true, absolutely. I think neurodivergence, or any kind of ADHD and all the other bits and pieces that are out there, not that I'm an expert on the subject at all, but they do play a part, I think. And what you just described there, is, I wasn't able to put a name to it or anything like that, but this idea that I could not sit with anything for any given length of time, my mind always going all over the place from one subject to the next and leaving bits and pieces behind at the same time. And all of a sudden, particularly with amphetamines, and this is much talked about and general knowledge now, I suppose, is that if you have ADHD, and stimulants will make you able to focus for a little while on one particular subject, and will make you, in a reversal almost of what you'd expect, calm down.
That's what I thought. And I found it quite weird, because you say, no, cocaine, like, you'll be fired up. You're going to be like super agitated. And for me, it was like, oh my God, that's the thing. That because the weed, they were fun, and they were fun for a while. But when on my 20s, I was getting like so fed up of like smoking a weed and lay down in the couch and then not doing anything and feeling horrible. And I say, okay, I'm not smoking, but then smoking again and feeling worse. So I was already an addict at that time. I didn't know about it.
Yes.
But I was already like, all the symptoms of addiction, they were already showing up. But I couldn't stop smoking. So when I found cocaine, and that the cocaine was like so brilliant for me, because instead of like putting me in the couch, it kind of calmed my brain down. And at the same time, I was functioning. I was able like to do things, be it studying, going to somewhere, seeing friends, like cleaning the house, whatever it was. I was able to do it while I was smoking weed. It was like a catastrophe. It was like literally doing nothing.
It was and I say this with very much tongue in cheek and, in quote unquote, but it was an effective ADHD medication for a short amount of time.
Yeah. I wasn't hooked with cocaine straight away. I think because of like, at that moment, we were all in psychedelics, my group. So we were really enjoying, like all going. We travel a lot in Brazil. Like it's something that we do, weekends, holidays. Like I was always around nature. And that for me was really big. So, and then having these psychedelics on nature was really like big experiences for me. I've always enjoyed it. So it took me years to come back to the cocaine, like fully on it. It was like when I was fed up again. Like I said, I'm fed up with the psychedelics. Like I had enough with that.
Yeah. Which kind of neatly brings us on to question 3, which is, what were your worst consequences? And finally, a little later, your rock bottom, if you had a rock bottom.
Worst consequences. I think, I had an overdose once in a club that was really bad.
You overdosed?
Yeah,
right.
That was really bad. I freaked my husband out. Like, it was horrible. And
Okay.
no, it was, well, whatever I was taking, because at that time there was the moment that, no, I was taking pills, whatever it was, I was putting inside me. So I really didn't know. I had a full concussion. It was hard on him. It was really hard. And the worst thing is that I had it, went home. After I was okay, I went home. 3 hours later, I was home, I was okay. What I'm going to get? That was one horrible thing that happened. The second one, I lost a job because of drinking and drugs. I stopped working properly. I was given excuse for showing up late and drinking while I was working.
So this is quite a few years later, I take.
Few years later. Yeah, I was already living here.
Right, okay.
I was living here and I was working. And
was this the first time that cocaine started becoming a problem? Maybe just ever so slightly going back?
So no. When I was overdosed at the club, cocaine was already a problem for me. That night I was not using cocaine, but cocaine was already a problem for me. And that was the time that my husband said, okay, it's me or the drugs. You have to choose it.
Right.
I cannot do that anymore. And I chose him. And I thought that I would be able to stop because I was like really willing to stop.
Yeah.
So what happened is like I went through a process of quitting the drugs, but I didn't quit alcohol. And I started drinking heavily afterwards.
Even though you actually don't really like alcohol, or you didn't?
Even though I don't like alcohol. It was like, and it was so fast how it progressed that I couldn't see it. And I never had a problem with alcohol before. So, of course, I was saying, I don't have a problem with alcohol. I just drink it because it's a party. You know, I'm not using drugs. I'm just drink like everyone else. But actually, I wasn't. No, I was drinking before going to the party, at the party, after the party.
But you managed to stay away from cocaine at the same time?
Yeah, but I substitute one for the other.
Yeah.
Things I was... And I felt that, okay, I don't have a problem anymore because my problem was cocaine. I was using a lot, cocaine and pills. I was using a lot.
What kind of pills?
From ecstasy to any stimulants, anything that give me a high, actually. So I love MDs. I love it. At the time was anything. So since I quit that, alcohol was just fun. It was just like social thing, acceptable thing. And my drinking was really, really bad. I came here. We moved countries because of his job.
And you have children as well.
And I had children as well. Yeah. So that was a big factor as well. Because Ruben said, and if you would choose the drugs, I would stay with the kids. And I couldn't, in my mind, I said, no way, between kids, my boys, and drugs, I'm going to choose my boys. And at the time I really thought was a willing thing. I thought it was like, if you really want something, I can do it. And I don't want to use drugs anymore. I didn't know about addiction. I didn't know anything that was happening in my brain.
Yeah.
So all my wanting things end up with, I need alcohol. I need something else. So if I'm not going to put a drug, I need something else to give me that satisfaction, to give me that happiness, to go to the place where I am comfortable in being myself, comfortable in existing.
Comfortable in existing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we moved here. I was drinking a lot, but I was functioning in a way. was drinking a lot during the night. I wake up, kids go to school, cook lunch, life. And then as soon as 6 o'clock pop in, like, okay, let's open a bottle of wine because I'm going to cook. So let's open a bottle of wine. And I lived like that for a while with my husband complaining, okay, you're drinking again. Come on, stop drinking. Please stop drinking. And in my mind, I really didn't have a problem with drinking. I was fine. Everything was fine. Everything was working. Then I started working here in a flower shop. And the flower shop had a lot of parties. It was really a party place. It was a hard work, but it was a hard party place. And in one of the parties, I ended up using again, of course. I didn't have a program. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know anything. I was vulnerable to life. And I used it again at that party.
Mm. How long had you been away from cocaine at this time?
Oh, it was a good years.
Right, a few years?
Good, like 6 years, 7 years that I was away.
Mm. And in that time, you just did quite a lot of heavy drinking.
Yeah, in that time, my drinking progressively spiralized. Like I was drinking more and more and more. Mm. Yeah.
I remember just as what you were saying there, you know, with your husband complaining about your drinking, and it just brought me back to those excruciating conversations with my wife, you know, of trying to reassure her that it's actually all okay and it's a laugh and it's not all as bad as that looks. And look, last time we went out to this place or that place, I didn't really drink all that much because I would always be able to just in time curb myself in just enough so that I look quote unquote respectable or functioning when really the wheels were coming off. I just brought back this memory and excruciating conversations all the time.
Yeah, it was a battling. For me, it was a battling all the time, and it was. I had to prove that I was all right.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. I had to prove it to him that I'm okay, that I'm all right, and then I'm doing it. Like, you know, I'm not using drugs. I'm doing what he wanted. I'm not using drugs. What else does he want? And I really blame him a lot. Like, say, stop annoying me, or like. Yeah,
you are reasonable.
I was a horrible person towards him, and I admit it. Like I couldn't stand. I felt like it was a kind of controlling on me, and I couldn't see any love in it. It was just like very fathering figure on it. You know, like it was not a good Mariana showing up there. No. Well, and then like I had this experience again with cocaine. I stayed out of it for a while, and things went up and down in my life. I lost the job in the flower shop because of drinking.
Right. When you say because of drinking, what happened? Did you just show up drunk, or were you always late, or what?
Yeah, I was always late. I mean, what happened was complicated, like a lot of politics.
Okay.
But I put myself in a vulnerable position where people were able to point the fingers on me, and I was the one that had to be fired.
I see.
You know, It was not. Of course, like I can say, like, okay, it could have been done in a more like ethical and moral way. Yeah, it could have, but I mean, it was my fault.
Yeah,
I did that to myself. I was the responsible for putting myself in the position where I was late, I was lying, I was not working properly, and that is my responsibility.
Did you see it like that at the time?
If you're enjoying this podcast and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
You felt wronged.
I felt very hurt at the time. It was I knew that the drinks, I knew that happened because of the drinks and drugs. Was I able to admit it? No, I wasn't. But I knew it had a part on it. What I was able to verbalize at the time, it was that people were horrible towards me. Like the way they treat me. It was like this addict mind games, like it was not my fault, someone else's fault. I can do better, but, like it's not how are they saying things are. It's like, like.
And how did it progress from there then towards?
From there was downhill. From like being fired, it was really downhill. I got depressed because in the end I loved my job, and being honest, like they were right to fire me, but
it still hurt.
It still hurted. So I got really depressed. Stay a while depressed, and it was progressively, and I started drinking more, started drinking during the day. And then we moved houses, and then it was more solitary, and in a way it was good, but in the other way it was like very alone. And then came lockdown. And lockdown for me was extremely hard. My grandma passed away at the beginning of the lockdown in Brazil, and I couldn't go there.
And this is the grandma?
My super grandma.
Yeah, so your substitute mother, so to speak, yes.
And it was, she fell, and she had to have a surgery, and she died during the surgery. So for me, it was devastating. For me, it was the end of the line. Like I was broken emotionally, and I did the only thing I knew what to do since I started the process. I use and drink, because that's how I dealt with the pain when I was 15, when I was 20, when I was 30. And that was how I was dealing with that at the time.
Yes.
But as a progressive illness, I was towards the end of my life. I was drinking non-stop, and I was using non-stop.
Wow.
I had moments of sleeping from blackouts or pure exhaustion. I stay awake the most time possible. I didn't have nights, days, anything. It was a completely mess. I locked myself in a room in our flat. My eldest son was living at uni. My younger one was at a high school, but they were like online high school. My husband was at home, and really, I didn't want to see neither of them. So I locked myself in this room, and I get out to get my booze and my drugs, delivery. I never spent so much money in Deliveroo. So that was what I did. Like I stayed there. I stayed 2 years locked down in that room.
So you had a lockdown and lockdown.
I had a lockdown and lockdown. Yeah, I rarely get out of that room. And when lockdown start like loosen up, and I'll say like, fuck, what the hell, I hate it. Can we please lock everyone else again? I don't want to, because people are like, okay, let's see each other. Like, I don't want to see anyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I was really like, just let me be here by myself. And I was suffering. I was in a deep pain And towards the end, at the beginning of the lockdown, I put the grief away. And I digged in the cocaine and alcohol, and that kept the pain away. And I did like pretend to learn something, or Zoom meetings, not AA meetings or
Right.
CA or anything like, no, meetings like any kind of like group meetings, friends meetings, so family meetings,
Social.
whatever social they have, like meetings, I was popping in. But I was drunk all the time, 24/7. And towards the end, I was desperately for that cycle to stop because the pain was unbearable. Unbearable. And I couldn't move out of that room.
So in this phase that you're talking about here, question 4 is quite fitting. Did you ever want to die? Did you consider
yes.
suicide?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I did. Like, I think it was August, my niece committed suicide. And I was locked in my room.
In the condition you were in?
In the conditions that I was in. My husband knocked the door and said, that she had died. And I found that she was so brave. So brave. I was like, that light the bulb in my mind. That was the solution for me. That it was what I had to do. At that time, I was self-harming already. So then suicide, it felt so comforting. Like when I had, like, okay, if I die, this will stop. Since I cannot live without drinks and drugs, and I don't want to drink and drugs anymore, maybe that's it. I don't have to be alive.
Yeah.
I must die for that to stop. Because that I couldn't see a solution.
We've often, in the rooms and in the literature as well, that place is often talked about, isn't it? Where you cannot live without drugs or drink or whatever your behavior might be, your addictive behavior, but you can't really live with it, and you can't really live without it anymore either. And it doesn't really leave a lot of wiggle room. It doesn't live, there is no, it leads you, and it led me, to suicidal ideation and well, possibly to more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I planned and I started writing the letters because I didn't want to, what I learned from her is that there's a big pain with the suicide that people have to live with. Like why, how, what went wrong? A lot of questions that gonna keep unanswered. Yes. And so I start writing letters to my sons and my husband, so they would be at peace when I left this world. And I really, really, truly believe that would be the best. Would be the best for them, because they wouldn't have to deal with me anymore. And would be the best for me, because I wouldn't have to deal with me anymore.
Yes.
And that was when I asked for help.
Before we go there, I think this is the moment also perhaps to say to everyone who's listening that if you're having such thoughts, particularly thoughts of everybody else being better off without you, if you're really starting to plan things and really consider suicide, there is help available. There is help out there. There's so many good organizations out there. Give the Samaritans a call, for instance, and speak out, speak up,
Ask for help.
Yes, absolutely. I do realize that this is quite triggering perhaps for people, and it's a difficult topic, but one that needs to be talked about because, of course, so many addicts, and not just addicts, but so many addicts do end up committing suicide. So, but there is help out there. So if you're feeling triggered by this, if this is really pushing those buttons, then reach out to anybody really that you can. So that was the moment that you said you asked for help.
Yeah,
right.
That was the moment that I asked for help. And I remember saying I could not articulate much because I was so drunk and high all the time that I lost the power of articulation in my mind. So the only thing that I could, because I only had thoughts, I wasn't speaking anymore. Things were not getting out of me. And I remember saying to him, I need help. This has to change. And it was the only thing that I could articulate and say, this has to change. I need help. I need help. I need help. And he tried like, what kind of help do you need? I said, I need help. You do whatever you want. I need help. I need it. And I put for the first time, I stopped running the show. And I gave myself to him and I said, do whatever you want. I cannot, I don't have any power over myself whatsoever. And I need this to change. And he arranged for me to go to a rehab.
Right.
And I went to this rehab full of shame, feeling horrible, the worst person in the world, that I let everyone down in. But at the same time, if I had a bit of hope of change, it has to happen there. Like I had to grab anything. And I had to at least be able to experience sobriety again. Because I wasn't, for the past 2 years, I wasn't sober for 24 hours. I was always drunk and I was always high. So I had to have this clarity of mind. And it was tough. It was really tough, but it was really good. Really good. I stayed 3 months in the rehab. And it was there that I was introduced to the 12 steps and all the concepts and all the things. And my journey started there.
Mm. So question 5 is, what other methods did you try to get sober before finding the rooms?
So I tried the first time that I tried to stop using cocaine when I was like before I moved to the UK. The first time I went to therapy, and nowadays I say like, what a waste of time. I was such a liar. I was like a ridiculously liar. Of course I was a liar. I was an addict. I was lying because I want to look good in the picture, because I didn't want the therapist to get in my problems, so I didn't have to work on myself. That was so simple, but I lied so much. Then, of course, it didn't work. Then I went to a psychiatrist to see, like, because I said, like, I need something to stop using drugs. And, of course, he gave me another drug. And that worked for that period. But then I started drinking heavily. Then I have to get out of the psychiatry drugs because I was getting, like, absolutely off my head, like, with the combination of both.
Yeah, drinking together with sort of...
Yeah, then I start...
substances,
yeah,
it's just not great.
It's not great. Then I start, like, timetable that, like, okay, so I'm going to drink Thursday, Friday and Saturday after 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I tried that.
I'm going to drink. Like planning when I was going to drink, planning what kind of drugs I was going to take, when I was going to take, and how much I was going to take.
And how successful were you with your diary?
Oh, but terrible. I was terrible. I always had an excuse for not following the plan.
All right, okay. So
it was pathetic. So I'm gonna drink after 6. Okay, but then I'm going to lunch with friends, and just a glass because we are having drinking with my friends. Because I'm gonna have just a gram of Coke. Oh, but that's not my Coke, so that doesn't count in my gram.
Right, yes, of course, yes. Somebody else's gear doesn't count for your own. Yeah, I hear you.
So that's so all the most ridiculous things. It was going and it was never successful. Never.
Did you believe at the time that you were going to be successful? Because I
did.
Yeah, I really thought that, look, I've got this plan. I love a plan. Yeah, it's like a to-do list.
Yeah.
I've got this plan. I've made a clear plan. I like sticking to plans, all that Germanness coming out. So I'm going to sort of do this, and I've got it all mapped out, and, might even have little bags of sub-bags of this, this bag is for that day, and that bag's, and obviously, I really believed it.
I believe that as well. And since I had the ability to stop the cocaine for that period of time, and I couldn't see how bad my drink was because I had stopped the drugs. My drink was spiritually out of control, and I had never drank it so much in my life as that time. I really thought that I was able to do that. So when I came back using drugs again, that was the plan. I'm gonna timetable that. I'm gonna organize it, and I can do it.
Because you're clever.
Oh, because I am strong and I'm powerful and I can do it.
So you said that you came then, after the rehab, you were introduced to the 12 steps. You found the rooms. Question 6 is, when you came in, did you struggle with the word God?
I think not after the rehab, because I knew about the fellowship before the rehab.
Right.
I didn't know what the program was, how it worked. I didn't know anything, but I knew about the fellowships beforehand. And what always put me off was the word God. Then I went to the rehab, and in the rehab, very cleverly, without connecting with the fellowship, there was this introduction to a power greater than myself. So various actions, various play games, various things that the rehab act had in hand for the residents. It was for you to start figuring out a power greater than yourself. That you're not that center of the universe. You're not that almighty powerful. And so when I learned about the steps, I had already figured it out that I am not. Something else is. So it was an easy process for me. But I had this work done, I because before the rehab, all the concepts of the Catholic gods and all the baggage that I carried from studying in a Catholic school, they were so heavy that they really put me off of the fellowship.
They almost tricked you in rehab, did they, to sort of see things? I say tricked, quote unquote, of course, but to sort of work your way around
Yeah,
this problem.
very cleverly, like in a very playful way, in a very light way, but in a way to understand, like to really acknowledge that we need something else, that I needed something else. I was not in the rehab because I put myself in. I was in the rehab because Rubens, my husband, like he was the one. Like, so at that moment, he was greater than myself. He arranged everything. He done everything. So I was there. So he was greater than myself. And then from that playship, like things start making sense for me that, yeah, I don't control the weather. I don't control the light. I don't control many things. And they are greater than myself. So building up this idea. So coming to the fellowship, like when I start really working the steps, God was, or the greater than myself was already like really well established.
And question 7, how do you experience your higher power today, or what are your God moments?
I love meditating. I really love meditating. And I think it's this quietness in mind. It's brilliant.
Do you want to share a bit about your practice, about your meditation practice?
I do a simple silent meditation because it's what works for me. Guided meditation, I think my ADD, like I start losing myself and overthinking what the other person is saying, the guiding, and I really lose it. So I have to sit down and comfortable. It can be laying down as well, but silence. And the process that I get in is I start first acknowledging the sounds around me, tiny sounds, big sounds, whatever sounds it is, but I have to give it a name. It's not, there is a sound. No, there is a sound of a bird. There is a sound of an airplane. This is a sound of the neighbor stepping out. So all the sounds, I have to literally give in a name to that. So I get out of my overthinking, and it is like one thing. And then I slowly can acknowledge smells. I can acknowledge them being really where I am at the moment. So acknowledging this space, that reality is happening at that moment. Then I start going to my body, like how am I feeling in my feet? Is it tense? There is pain. And my knees. And then I go like body scanning, go up and then I go down, body scanning again. And normally when I finish it, that is already like a good amount of time in this very mindful place. And it's good. I love being in nature. So every time I'm in nature, I kind of feel this God presence as well. For me, it's very powerful. I am a tree hugger.
Brilliant definition. Yeah, that's great. And this helps you obviously to connect to your higher power.
Definitely.
Yeah, wonderful. Great.
Nothing like a forest bathing.
Question 8 is, which parts of the steps were the most difficult for you?
Or
challenging?
Yeah, I think step 9, it was
the amends process.
The amends process it was where my fear came back a little bit. I was really scared of what could happen in saying sorry to people and putting myself in that vulnerable position. But as I started it, and as I put this ego sideways, and I said, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I did wrong. So acknowledge it with all your heart. So when I really fully came to that, and I started doing it, because I couldn't do that in one go. I had people scattered all over the world, and it was not easy. So it took me a while to go to places or to receive people in my life again. But when it finished, I felt so kind of happy, like despite all the horrible things, the power of acknowledging that, yeah, it was horrible. Yes, I'm so sorry. I was a horrible person. And I acknowledge that this humble position, was really relieving. And having people, having their feedback, it was powerful as well. And because some of them added up to my list, says, yeah, you forgot this or that or that one. And as painful as it was good to hear. It was good to hear that, my perspective is not the only one. So it came back to the point that, yeah, I'm not the center of this universe. Other people saw the same thing in different ways, and they heard them in different ways. Yeah, so...
Do you just come to think of it, I've got one of my sponsees who's just doing his amends, and he's... It took a little while for him to get going. If anyone is listening who's just at that stage right now, what would you say to them? Is there any word that you would say to someone who's just at the cusp there of having to go out and wanting to make amends but really being scared?
Breathe.
Breathe.
Yeah, sit down, breathe calmly, and deep down acknowledging your wrongdoings for yourself, like to yourself, this in a calm way, in a very compassionate way. And that may give you the courage to go and face someone else. Because these are, for me, was that, like having the power, the courage to acknowledge it to myself, that what I did, but acknowledging it truly in my heart to myself, that what I did was wrong. Then it was easier to face someone else, because I was already knowing what I did wrong. And so even though some of the people said, yeah, but and this and that, or like asking hard questions, my kids, both of them asked hard questions for me, and I have to answer them honestly. And it was nerve-wracking, but it was good. It was like very full of love in the end.
It's no coincidence, really, is it, that the promises, what we call the promises, which are really the step 9 promises, aren't they? That they come as just after step 9,
Yeah.
It's experiential, I think. I believe that Bill and all the other people involved at the very beginning must have made a very similar experiences, that when you've made, if as it says, if we've been painstaking in this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. And it is true that by, once you've done about half your amends, or maybe even earlier, you'll be amazed. And that was my experience as well. It's no coincidence, this. Absolutely not. Question 8 is the only question that you've actually known about. Everything else was spontaneous, but this is the one that you knew about.
The one that I overthought.
Yeah, the one that you overthought and obsessed about, which is... which character defects give you most trouble? So overthinking clearly is one.
Yeah. The pride and fear. Right. I think pride, it's very connected to the ego, right? So, and every time the ego take part, like overcome my thoughts, it's taking over and it's me running the show again. So every time and pride can show itself in lots of different ways, or show in a lot of different ways. It's not only like being proud of, well, super pride, but like what people think of me, or like what, am I doing it rightly? The perfectionist part of me, everything like can sparkle this coming back of ego. So, and for me, it's very important. And it comes a little bit hand to hand with the fear, because the fear triggers a lot of anxiety. And the anxiety, it's connected with the ego. And both are I have to be very aware of them all the time. Like it's something that I have to take care of it. And when I was overthinking the question, and I was like, okay, this is my pride overthinking it.
Yeah.
That's my ego for taking care of it. Because like, what's going to answer? How am I going to look like amazing? You know? No, I have to admit that I have pride. And that's pride. It's my ego talking.
Yeah. Question 10. What's the best thing recovery has given you?
Oh, that's so many.
Let's hear them.
My son's back in my life. My husband back. I have a family again.
Yes.
And my husband and my two boys. The three of them are back in my life again. He gave me something that I cannot remember of. That is myself. He gave me a deep knowledge of my brain, a deep knowledge of my behavior, of how I react to the world, or how I am putting myself out. That's what he gave me. And he gave me tools to change. He gave me the courage to change as well. And he gave me peace of mind. He gave me calmness. Even when I was, because at the beginning of my recovery, I was so anxious. But even at that time, I had the calmness to acknowledge that was a moment, that was a phase, that it was going to pass as well. And it did. Nowadays, I'm like, and this willingness to growth, it's something that recovery gave me as well. I'll keep growing, keep walking. And it gave me the willingness to live, to fully enjoy life. It took away, that's funny, it took away this persona that I had created, these masks that I have put in myself so I could face the world.
Right. Wonderful. Question 11. What would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict?
Oh, I think there's two different things, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit mean because there's actually two questions in one. That's right.
Because I think if you don't know if you're an addict, it's complicated, because I can tell you, your parents can tell you, your brother, your sister, your best friend, anyone can tell you. But if you don't think you are, you're not gonna think you are. Like, it's something that you have to admit yourself that you are. It's not someone else's job. And it's a tricky situation because you can see the pain, you can see the behavior, and you can see everything else in someone else's. And you cannot convince them. I stayed years of my life not believing that I was an addict. And it didn't matter. People could say to me whatever they wanted. I was truly convinced that I was not. No. So few things can help. On the other hand, for instance, I think there's questions you can ask the person, like, can you stop? How much do you use? How you plan? How if you plan, does it happen? Can you stop? Can you stay stopped? That maybe trigger a self-reflection. But I honestly, I don't know if you can convince anyone that they are an addict.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the book, so the AA book, it never really says outright you're an alcoholic. It always sort of puts the questions to you, doesn't it? The questions that you just said as well, and said if you answer yes to these questions, it is likely that you are an alcoholic, that you may be alcoholic. Questions like, if you start drinking or using, do you have any kind of control over when to stop? And can you stay stopped? It says, try not drinking for a year. The idea was preposterous to me.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you can't diagnose someone else.
No. Yeah. And that's powerful and sad and complicated at the same time, because the pain around the addict, it involves so many people. It's not only the addict that is in pain, like it causes mayhem around it. So, and these people around, they are desperate to have their family members back, their friend back, and they really genuinely want to help. But if the only person that can help is the addict, I can only help myself. It's complicated.
And what would you say to a newcomer?
Newcomers, don't be scared. And don't worry too much about all the jargons that are said. And don't worry about God. Just keep coming back.
Yes.
Find a sponsor and keep coming back. Keep coming back, because at the beginning, none of us understood anything that was going on. It's a process, and it's a process for life. And if you are willing, it is the most wonderful thing that you can do to yourself.
Great. Our last question, question 12. What do you want your higher power to say to you, quote unquote, at the pearly gates?
Have you helped anyone else?
You've certainly helped me and all the listeners today. You were absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming around, Mariana.
Thank you for asking me. Really such a pleasure.
Yeah, you were so full of wisdom and humility and courage in sharing your story with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe. While this pod is based on the 12-step recovery program, it's not officially affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. 12 Steps and 12 Questions is not substance or behavior specific, it's fully self-supporting and not-for-profit. And you know this next bit. It's not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, and it neither endorses nor opposes any causes.